Alright guys, TacticalRab here today. Hope you're all doing well and enjoying your day so far. Welcome back to Valorant News. The first official VCT match of the season has begun on the Challenger side. A couple of games last night. FaZe finally confirmed their roster absolutely as last minute as they possibly could have done. But G2 versus FaZe was a very spicy series indeed, with FaZe going up 1-0, then squandering the series advantage, and G2 certainly letting them know after the series concluded. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always, I'd greatly appreciate it. Let's dive into things then. Firstly, FaZe finally confirming their team. As I say, I believe they're meant to confirm this a day before they did. Some issue happens, and I don't know exactly what it was, but regardless, they finally confirmed what their actual roster is going to be. It is official. They've got all the guys of Dicey, Supermed, Babybay, Rossi, and Poise. They literally had to confirm it then, because otherwise anyone would have known just watching the broadcast later in the day that they indeed had this team. But bringing Rossi in last minute, pretty interesting decision, because I think Neptune was meant to be here initially, and then they made the call to swap him out for Rossi. Of course, as it turns out, pretty last minute move that means that other teams definitely had a practice advantage over these guys. They started out the series, they played strongly, but yeah, it didn't work out as the series progressed. Also, this from Rossi, thank God to my family and friends for supporting me, so pretty cool stuff. Glad to see Rossi doing well, just because he was on TSM, had a bit of a hard time, definitely some drama and controversy around this player. Played very well on the Nation in the qualifiers, failed to qualify of course on that team, and then immediately got a spot on FaZe, so all good for all parties involved. Now, big story as well from yesterday on the VCT lock-in capsule. Now, this is basically these kind of knife variants here for all the different, at least regions around the world. So, it's honestly really cool. Like, I wish other esports, you know, notably would actually do something along these lines to support the kind of franchise competitive ecosystem. But the idea is that Riot can absolutely make bank off this, because 50% of the revenues from these sales go to them, but the other 50% of revenues get shared across all the partner teams. I don't know if they get shared equally, which would be kind of interesting, but even if they do, then it's still, you know, it's still a revenue source for the actual teams in the league to kind of pay them back for, well, committing to the franchise in a sense. So I think it makes sense, to be honest, and yeah, good to see how this is going. I believe these are some of the footages of how exactly they look. I guess I'll try and bring them up on the big screen real quick so you guys can exactly see what's going on here. For the 4 different variants, we've got a blue one, a red one, a purple one, and a green one. So yeah, A, B, C, and D, all that good stuff. And I'm not exactly sure how this is going, but they're available in just under a week's time in the Valorant store. There's also this update I wanted to bring you guys just from Tarek quickly, because there was some concern and some theories the other day that potentially Riot were going to shut down Pro City. Were they happy with Tarek doing this and taking a lot of the pro players away from ranked? And apparently, like, they're down for this, and it makes sense, because Riot can't really oppose this stuff, because if they do, they look like the bad guys in the story, obviously. And clearly the plan is for them just to actually fix the game in the first place, and then the Pro City thing won't be necessary for the pros. Now, apparently Riot are also introducing, or considering introducing, prizing for this and making it kind of a real thing. So that's a really cool idea, to be honest. I don't know if Riot really have plans to create a system that would equate to Pro City, kind of like an FPL or a Rank S ESEA type thing from back in the day in CSGO. So yeah, good news, I guess, that Pro City will remain, and Tarek will keep running it, and maybe Riot will even kind of support it with some prizing a little bit further down the line. Let's talk then about the VCT matches. So 2 per day for a few days on every weekend, and there were some pretty good ones last night. G2 versus FaZe to close, or to start things out. Penny was somehow appearing twice here for some reason, and immediately there were some rather good memes about this one. And in fairness, these memes about FaZe's stock price continued as the series actually began, because FaZe started out strong here on Fracture. They won this first game relatively comfortably, actually. I believe it was 13-5. So yeah, the Newsfade team came out swinging. We know that G2 in the early days of scrims, when this team formed, were doing very well indeed. They were like pretty much dominant in scrims, and it was looking really good for them. But in recent weeks, it maybe hasn't been quite so clear that they are one of the dominant forces there in Challengers. Most people are looking at M80, most people are looking at the guard, but game 2 they bounce back, and this I think is really cool. I mean, Oxy, look at this 2k from Oxy, absolutely absurd. I think there was some talk about ShahZaM mentioning a story on stream about when they talked to Oxy to potentially sign for them, or at least trial for them, he didn't even want to respond because he didn't feel like he was worthy of that opportunity. And ShahZaM was like, look, just take the trial and we'll just see how it goes from there. And last night, I mean, especially on this game 2 Icebox, it was Oxy just doing it all on the team, or for the team, on the Rays. I mean, up 12-4 with Oxy already going off. To get that 2-piece through the smoke here, or through the wall, is just crazy stuff. Cool to see Harbor getting some action as well, even though it didn't work out so well for FaZe here. So game 2 goes the way of G2, thanks to Oxy in large part. And then game 3, 13-6, pretty comfortable in the end. So yeah, FaZe started off well, but G2 bounced back pretty nicely and win the first series 2-1 of the season. Obviously, down the line, it's the wins that really matter more so than the scoreline, but of course, the more comfortable the series, the better it can be potentially down the line for placings and tiebreakers, whatever might be occurring. And as Scott Robertson says, FaZe during that series, you know, the stock price kind of in the mud, as it started off strong and then it fell down the cliff a fair little bit. ShahZaM says 1-2-1 versus FaZe, GG, slow start for us, but proud of how we fought back. So ShahZaM is obviously, you know, going to be pretty cordial about this whole thing and try not to talk too much trash, but some of his teammates disagreed with that kind of analysis, because Babybay actually said, you know, we did the choking today. Apparently he was shooting some bodies, then get Cloud on Icebox and Haven down the line, and yeah, she should be like that, got a teabag, win or lose, he says. And then we also got this tweet here from Babybay after map 1, job's not done. So usually when you say job's not done, you know, you're pretty confident you're going to close out the rest of the series, but Daph was like, yeah, facts, we just came back on you guys, absolutely no problem at all. And Daph continued, right? I'm kind of surprised why Daph was going so hard against these guys. Maybe he feels like there was some beef in the map 1 or whatever. But yeah, Daph was not slowing down after taking these guys down in the series. Says the following: 2-1 versus FaZe, first match in a while, but this was way easier than I remembered. Thanks to the fans for the support. It's a pretty cool story for Daph, really, the fact that he was, of course, on Sentinels with ShahZaM. He had the story that he was going to stay on Sentinels. I believe they told him he was going to stay. ShahZaM had maybe heard some similar things. Turned out that it wasn't going to happen. Sick is now their sub instead. Daph may have still had an offer to stay as like a second sub, but it seems unlikely. So he was kind of dropped unexpectedly by the team. Finds himself on this roster. Good to see him competing again, of course, because I think it was a pretty underrated element of that Sentinels team, to be honest. So hopefully this G2 team can deliver. And I mean, yeah, it's like, yeah, these guys are way easier to beat than I remember. Easy AF, baby, for FaZe. And there's also this one. So Infamous tweeted this out, who does tournaments for FaZe and is kind of still like a manager over there, I think, to a certain extent. And after they won map 1, when you left EU Valorant to lose to FaZe in LA Challenges, and because of course G2 is an organization, they were in Europe, they wanted to come to North America, they were going to get a spot in the North American Franchise League. That didn't happen for various reasons, and they're of course back now in Challenges. But as Dapr says, managers tweeting is always the biggest joke, he says, with a cloud face emoji as well. So yeah, not holding back here at all. G2 rubbing the salt in the wounds of FaZe, but it's only the first series of the season, so you know, things are going to change down the line. But 2-1 for G2 in the end. The overall series numbers like this: Oxy was not exactly the hard carry, but I mean, look at these numbers, 55 kills over the course of it. Dapr has the lowest rating on the team, but still has the second highest amount of kills, so you know, ratings are always a bit dodgy sometimes. But Fracture was 13-5, of course, in FaZe's favour, then Icebox 13-4, and then Haven 13-6 in the end. So it wasn't particularly close in the end, and ShahZaM had a good map 3 to close out the series against FaZe. Still, of course, room for improvement for both of these teams if they want to potentially beat a team down the line such as the Guard. They played their first match last night up against Disguised, and they won this relatively comfortably. I mean, it's got to be said that DSG had a better chance in this series, I think, than they capitalized on. There was a few rounds where, you know, Steel would go in and just die on the smokes and stuff, and there were some questions there as to whether, okay, if those rounds go differently, then maybe Disguised Toast win a map here, because every map you win can be important with tiebreakers down the line, especially against teams like the Guards that, you know, are arguably the best team in the entirety of Challenges. So game 1 here on Bind did go the way of the Guard in the end, even though DSG put up a nice fight here, and then game 2 in the end was, you know, pretty comfortable for the Guard after they warmed up on Ascent. So yeah, 2-0, a pretty comfortable victory for them, as Disguise say, GG's Guard 0-2, other fight Guards here, dad. The Guard certainly got hands, right? Those guys are very strong indeed, and we'll see how they kind of progress over the season, right? But yeah, the Guards start off strong as expected. Obviously, this team is expected to either win Challenges or, you know, go through all the way to Ascension and get through that way and become the team to qualify. So yeah, Disguise says, I thought, honestly, put up a bit more of a fight than I thought they might have done. Certainly on the Bind, right, 13-9. I'm sure they feel like a couple of these rounds here, if they went differently, they could have been in with a, you know, better chance, up 6-2, of course, in the first half. There was a chance they did something there, but the Guard bounced back, as you might expect from this team. Trent, of course, is just so, I mean, these team has all sorts of good players, but I mean, Trent individually didn't have a crazy series, but I still feel like as a player, he might be one of the closest to getting signed. I wonder what the case is down the line here for the Guard, because let's say some of the tier 1 teams want to make changes, and they want Trent, or they want some other player on the Guard, or M80, or one of these other teams that's doing very well in tier 2. Like, will the Guard sell a player like Trent to a tier 1 team because they want to keep all their best players and therefore qualify with the best possible chance through Ascension to actually get there? So I wonder what the appetite will be for some of these organizations to part with their best players if tier 1 players want them. They might not be able to get any of these guys because tier 2 teams like the Guard and like M80, they want to keep hold of their best players, because if they get rid of them, then they might not qualify for Ascension, probably won't qualify for Ascension, and in that case, then the money you got for that player isn't necessarily worth it, right? So I think it's an interesting storyline to keep your eyes on down the line, because if pro teams go fishing down in tier 2 for some of these players, they might get rejected pretty harshly by some of these tier 2 teams. I wouldn't be surprised at all if that was the case. And these are the top performers on the day. Valiant had a 1.52 rating to win the series, and Oxy as well a 1.22 rating, but certainly on an individual level are the two best players of the series for those respective teams. Just wanted to close out with this as well here that came up from PlatChat last night, analysing the top 20 players according to their rankings going into the lock-in tournament. So pretty interesting to look at this actually. We've got Aspas number 1, Durka number 2, Cryo, Leo. So, you know, quite the rankings compared to what it was last year, for example, like where Ye was obviously going to be right at the top. Nowadays, Ye's down here in 12th, and Cryo, his kind of counterpart, even Ardis is here in 10th. So definitely some interesting changes over the course of the season, right? When we look at like what things were like last season, and now with the different meta, the chamber being gone, the different team dynamics, Ye individually wasn't quite as strong at the Red Bull home grounds as maybe we've seen from him before. We don't really know what Ardis is going to do. We know what Cryo did there though, and we've got some, I mean, yeah, look, that Fnatic team is going to be good. They've got Leo, they've got Durka. Obviously, the former Loud team that's made some new additions with Sassy and Pancada going to North America with Sentinels, they're going to be strong. They've still got some great players that are appearing on this list. Even Shao is here, Chronicle is here as well, and Asuna actually at 17th on the list, zyppan and cNed. So, you know, there's some players from around the league, but in terms of Sentinels, they've not really got much representation here at all, pretty much just zyppan. But then you look at 100 Thieves, they've got Bang here, Cryo is here, Asuna is here, and all that. So, you know, definitely some spicy storylines going into the season, but it really does depend who wins those round 1 games, because they are not going to be easy to call by any means. So hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.